Okay. Okay, you're being recorded. All right. Rebbetzin Golshevsky, please.
Bismillah. Okay, so I want to welcome everybody. We're continuing. There are those who were here for a prior session, and there are also, I guess, some of you are also in the subgroup that are learning Mavaya book inside. So it's good to see some familiar faces. Hi, Tovinda, and some others. Here's Olivia also. So with what looks like, is this a new grandchild? Does it feel? So we're sort of like we're running on two tracks at the same time. I'm going to try and keep it straight where we were last time, because we're picking up on a session from a session that we did a while back, and which was, I think we sort of just got started. You know, there's so much to talk about, and now I think we should get more into specifics. Now I want to tell you that the Mavaya book tells us that that when saying the verses, because there's verses to be recited through different parts of the process. So I'm going to be focusing on quite a bit of that today, and about specifically the holiness of the body, because the Mavaya book says it's a very, very big rectification and repair spiritually for the mace, of their body, to have the proper kavanot for those who are doing the act of Tahara, that you should have very pure kavanot when saying those verses, and really understand what they're trying to convey. Now, the reason why I mentioned last time, the Mavaya book, really the whole order, the kind of fixed and set order of burial practice that we have, preparation for burial, and also afterwards, that's really where we have it all laid out very neatly. It's the first place where it's all gathered together and put in such a very neat and organized way, with so much teaching in it, and for about 500 years ago. So it's very Kabbalistically inflected, because he was from the generation of the Kabbalists of the time of the Arizal, and he's encouraging. And when he encourages the Chevra Kadisha, I mean, he means to whatever extent it's possible for those who are taking care of the needs of the dead to be mitamek, to delve into the meaning of the practice. So the fact that you've built this and are building this community of practice is something that the Mavaya book, I think that he would have very much approved of, because he speaks about it so directly, how important it is. So let's begin. I guess we can begin sort of at the beginning. The sheet has to be removed. The body is covered, and the body has to be exposed. Now, in the exposure of the body, so even the act of removing the sheet is already a significant act, because the removal of the sheet is an acknowledgement that I'm embarking on the removal of what are called the kohos hatuma. We spoke about this. I'm trying to remember which class we spoke about it in, but as soon as the soul is out of the body, already the body becomes a vulnerable repository of we'll call it negative spiritual forces. They're sometimes called chitzonim, outside forces. It's called tum'ah, it's called impurity. But what it really means is that, like, as soon as the light of the soul is removed from the body, because that's death, as soon as the light of the soul, the vitalizing soul, is moved from the body, and a person could be, could be incapacitated in a bed and not feeding themselves and not even breathing themselves for indefinite periods of time prior to death. And all the while that the soul and the body are still bound up together, the soul is such a powerful light that it drives away the inevitable, what would be otherwise the inevitable encroachment of the force of Tumah attaching itself to the body. So all the while that there's life there is like this burning, it's kind of like this burning, cleansing force within the body that keeps it very much secure. It keeps it whole and intact spiritually as well. And then when that force is removed, that's the aleph that's the aleph of the Adam that goes away. And when it's removed, the person is left dam, a repository of blood, a body, just a body. And at that point, the body is very vulnerable. And so it becomes the responsibility of everyone who is caring for the mace to make sure that the body is protected to whatever extent possible. And so we have shmira, even before the Chevra Kadisha, maybe before you step onto the scene. So there should be somebody who's been involved in shmira.
What?
I will see what.
Is someone, people need to mute out the.
What?
Taser.
So we have other procedures. The candle is lit, right? The candle is lit. The body is covered. Somebody is there saying Tehillim in the best of all circumstances. There is shmira. There's a living person there who's going to be together with the body and doing an act of a mitzvah in order of reciting those Tehillim in order to be able to be actively bringing the active aleph, that active soul of the person who's coming to do the chesed shel emet, that you're coming there to bring the aleph to the place of the met. That's the emet, right? You're bringing your integrated soul to the person who has passed away in order to serve as a kind of protector for them. But at some point, it's time to remove the sheet. Now, the removal of the sadin, that's the way it's described in this farm, is the cover. So the removal of the sadin means that I'm embarking now on doing whatever I can to protect, even though I have to, right? In order to do my job, I have to uncover the body. And we know that as soon as the body is uncovered, it's already immediately in a state of greater vulnerability to the force of tum'ah. And you can even understand this just from like a kind of, not so much a mystical perspective, but a psychological one. All of you have had, that's what it means to be working with the Chevra Kadisha, have had to deal with the experience of encountering the lifeless body. Now, the encounter with the lifeless human body, right? The encounter with the lifeless human body, there's something that is, it has the first time. It's like it's a shocking thing. A human being not enlivened by their soul. There's something shocking about it. And then the risk afterwards is that it's coarsening, right? That there's something coarsening in being in contact with the body, with the uninhabited body, because the biggest vulnerability of the body is to be seen only as a body, that it's not seen as a tashmish of kedusha. The Chevra Kadisha come, I'll explain what I mean by that. The Chevra Kadisha come, and one of your highest priorities is when you're working with all of the parts of the body to see every single one as a tashmish shel kedusha, as a mezuzah case, as a Sefer Torah cover, meaning that you come with your positive intentions and you are reinfusing holiness and soul to the place where it has detached, so that the human being is not a piece, chas v'shalom, just a piece of flesh that's already decaying. And this is when we talk about tum'ah affecting the body, we can even understand it from the way that we must overcome our tendency to see the body as just a body. Right? And anybody who works in the medical field, leave the Chevra Kadisha alone. Even people who are just working with the body, working with the sick body, the ailing body. So it is also something must always be overcome, this tendency of being mitame the guf, that the body can be defiled by our misapprehension of what the body is. Now, so the first place you start with is when you have all of your psukim and you're washing the body. First, you remove the sheet. It's a moment to reflect and remember. I am exposing, right? I'm now this person's body has been in a state of somewhat protection, and its kavod is to be covered. That's burial. We say the kavod of the body is that it's covered. Even here, garments in the Talmud, Rabbi Yochanan said, I never called my garments my garments. I called them mechabduse. I call them the things that give me kavod, the things that give me honor. Now, one of the reasons why is because garments identify who you are. If you wear the what they call the Chalukah de Rabbanan, the sages had a certain cloak that they wore. I identified them as sages in the time of the Talmud. So that if you saw someone wearing such a cloak, you knew you had to stand up for him, you knew you had to give him precedence in all matters and so on, because he was a great Torah scholar. Now, there's something deeper in that. The extra layer of covering, that extra layer of covering is called kavod. And for the person, for the mace, so to have the body exposed in such its vulnerable, uninhabited state, where it's possible to see it only chas v'shalom as a piece of flesh, a decaying piece of flesh, God forbid. So this is considered to be the deepest kind of vulnerability. So as soon as the kavod, this is, we say, oh my goodness, as soon as I take off the covering and I'm seeing the person's body for the first time, I must infuse kavod. I must redirect myself in a great way of kavod, right? I have to right away reorient myself. How much kavod I want to show the covering of the Sefer Torah, the housing of the mezuzah, the batim of the tefillin, because that's what the body is. It is all of these ideas of the housing, right? All of these beautiful ideas of the housing of the Kli Kodesh. Now, the psukim that you recite, so they're meant to bring you to a state of awareness of the Tzelem Elokim, that the human being is created in the image of God, and actually all of the different parts of the body, from the hair down to the feet, are representative of divine attributes. And it's perfectly appropriate. It's actually, the Mavaya book says it's recommended that in as much as a person can deeply understand the meaning of the verses that they recite and how the higher qualities of the body parts are being praised through these verses, then that's something that you do. That is such a deep chesed. That's a deep act of kindness that you do for the mace. Because aside from the physical task before you, your intentional task, which is really what we're talking about, is to flow, to just pour your kavod upon this person, so that, because the soul is in a deep state of disorientation and also pain, seeing, because it says in the Talmud in Gemara and Shabbos that until the grave is sealed, the soul is aware of what's being done to the body, and it's something very painful to see this its body uninhabited. Like, what is it now? What is it? What is left except this just this flesh and blood and bone? And so the soul suffers, but it's present. And as the person who, the Chevra Kadisha come and they make the effort to be mechabed the person's body, they're mechabed actually the soul, right? Because the soul gets relief, because they say, oh, there's people in the room here. However many people are in the room doing the work, there are people here who recognize that my body is not just a piece of meat, and they are still showing kavod to my emptied out body in recognition of the fact that I, the soul, used to be there. And this is something that gives great release and great relief to the soul. And so it's an incredible act of kavod. And you know how kavod, what does kavod mean? Kavod is from the language of kaved. It means to have gravitas, right? It means to take something seriously, to give it weight. So gravitas is going to be expressed through all of the guidelines that you have from the Chevra Kadisha, that you don't talk Adarim B'Teilim, you don't talk about other stuff that has nothing to do with, only the needs of the Tahara are to be spoken. You're not supposed to speak as little as possible, and to act with Kovid Rosh, and to move in a way that is befitting, and to act in a way that is becoming. And all of those, that outpouring of kavod is such a gift that it's really the final and one of the greatest gifts that's possible to give a person, is to be mechabed their body, to honor their body, even after it's no longer inhabited by their soul. So you take off the sheet, and at that moment, you take off the covering, and at that moment, it's a moment of great vulnerability, and especially in Chutz La'aretz. The Mavaya book says this is all the more true in Chutz La'aretz, because it's considered, it says in the Zohar Kodesh and Parshas Truma that it's like it's a very powerful image. Truma is one of the parshiot in the Zohar where it talks about the greatness of Eretz Yisrael. So it says that those who die outside of the land, so as if they died and they were not embraced in their mother's bosom as they left the world. Like the difference, the way it's described in the Zohar is that to die in Eretz Yisrael is like dying in your mother's arms. And there's something inherently comforting about it. And in Chutz La'aretz, it becomes, therefore, the Mavarya book says it's all the more important because there's no consolation from the land. You don't have the consolation of being in Eretz Yisrael. So the main consolers come in the person of the Chevra Kadisha themselves, who come to be the mother who is embracing, the mother who and you'll see, like we have verses from Shir HaShirim, right? It's like Kulach Yafa Rayasi Umum Ein Brach, one of the most beautiful verses in all of Tanakh. You are entirely beautiful, my beloved. There's not a single flaw in you. Now, when you receive, when you come into contact for the first time with a Jew who has passed away, so bodies can be in very, very varying states of condition when they come to your hands. And sometimes they are in, they have been badly disfigured. It can happen, chas v'shalom. Or it can be that they are wasted away terribly through their final illnesses, or any number of other pgiot, any other kinds of damage, different kinds of damage to the body, that upon encountering these different forms of damage to the body, so it's avoda, it's a very deep spiritual avoda for the Chevra Kadisha, for members of the Chevra Kadisha, to learn to see and to feel the holiness of the body and to overlook its places of injury. And when you're reciting your verses and you're talking about the perfection of the head and the perfection of the this, but you're going to see perhaps a very imperfect body before you. But the verses are all perfection of the body, and what we're left with is not necessarily in perfect condition, correct? I mean, that's like the least likely. I mean, almost nobody leaves the world in a state of perfect, intact condition. That would. So when you're saying these verses, it's a way of going back to, of reinfusing perfection through your own vision, through your own feeling and your own respect for this person's body. And this is something that you do for someone you love. It's like if I had to take care of somebody, right? I had to take care of somebody with with chas v'shalom, some kind of a terrible flesh wound, right? So if the person is a stranger to me and I have no connection with them emotionally, so I might have to really overcome a great deal of revulsion in order to be able to clean out their wound, bind their wound, take care of them. If I love them, so then I'll kol p'shaim techaseh ahava, that the love itself compensates and overcomes what might be my natural recoil from the place of imperfection. And this is something that you bring, the members of the Chevra Kadisha have a great power to bring to the Tahara. It's the great love of your fellow Jew and your great desire to see them in their state of perfection, even as their body is broken and emptied. And so you have an incredible opportunity to do this wondrous chesed, just like think about what it feels like. We're all imperfect. We're all terribly imperfect. And when someone loves you and you feel like you have some kind of something about yourself, some physical aspect of yourself that you're uncomfortable with, and the person who loves you, they just say, no, this is like, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to me. How could you think it's ugly? It's beautiful. This is what you do as the Chevra Kadisha, the holy company of the Chevra Kadisha, have the power of bringing love and the light of perfection of the body back to the mace. And a person could live their whole life, because you're going to have people, the Mavarya book actually says that all of these verses, that they're really most appropriate to be used for somebody who was a Torah scholar and a tzaddik, who used his body the way he should have his whole life long, and then this is like the crowning achievement, right? This is the crowning accomplishment at the end of his life, to praise every part of the body. But actually, we find that it is inscribed in the practices for Chevra Kadisha everywhere to say these verses, regardless of what a person did or didn't do in their lifetime. And so that's something that's a very profound lesson, that this became standard practice instead of something that's reserved just for very, very special people as a way of giving them greater honor, but that everybody is honored in this way. It's really an opportunity to bring Kedusha and Kavod to the body of every single Jew that you come in contact with. And kulach yafa v'yasiu mum ein bach, right? And you are entirely beautiful, my beloved, and there's no flaw in you, is a great final gift to be able to give. So the sheet is taken off, and we have b'chutz la'aretz. So in chutz la'aretz, the Mavar Yabok says, outside of Israel, it's even more important to say all of these verses. Again, same idea like in Truma, because the consolation comes from the Chevra Kadisha. The rectification and repair comes via the Chevra Kadisha, not from the land itself. And so this is something that that is in your hands to do. Now, there's first rechitza, first there's washing, and afterwards there'll be tahara. Tahara is purification. Beforehand is the washing itself. Now, the washing, you can imagine it, right? As washing is to remove actual soiling, right? Washing is for removing soiling. And it's very, very important. I don't know what your guidelines look like in various Chevra Kadishas. I mean, I'm assuming they're fairly uniform, but we know it's very, very important, especially from the face, but from every part of the body, to remove every speck of dirt that can be discovered, excrement, anything, any foreign substance should be removed to whatever extent it's possible to remove it. Now, so the first is that there is a kind of spirit of impurity that the physical dirt is emblematic of. It parallels. This first washing is to cleanse away ruchot tumah. That's the way it's spoken about. But the Tahara is the next level, because then there's no more physical. There's no soil. There's nothing dirty on the body, but it actually inaugurates the Tahara. It actually has a lot to do with this week's parsha. The Moshe Rabbeinu, he was told to inaugurate the Levim into their office. So it says, Kachat HaLevim, Tiharta, and take the Levim, meaning gather them together and convince them that they should take this job on. You have to, convince them that it's a good idea to take on the office of the firstborn's obligations. So you got to convince them, and tihartotam, and purify them. And Moshe Rabbeinu was confused about how he was supposed to be mitaher, how he could purify the v'yim, because purity is something that comes from on high. It's not something that you can confer. Tahara, purity, right? How are you supposed to make pure? The best you can do is wash. No? What are you supposed to do? Nevertheless, you find that you have two stages. You have washing, and then afterwards you have Tahara. So it must be that you can do something like this. Moshe Rabbeinu was confused. And when Hashem told him to purify the Levim, he was perplexed a little bit. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu clarified. He said, Ko v'cho ta'aseh. This is how you should do. You'll take the special waters of the para aduma waters, the red heifer waters, v'tiharta otam. You'll sprinkle upon them, and then they will be purified. So the second set of the flow of the waters is in order to enable Tahara to descend, for Tahara to come to the person. But it's not that you can actually be metaher. You just do an act like Moshe Rabbeinu in inaugurating the Levim. You just do an act that enables Tahara to take hold, purity to take hold. But actual purity itself is something that's a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a gift from Hashem. So the first is the water is always representative of chesed. It's always representative of chesed, of loving kindness. And so here you are again doing the chesed shel emes. You come, the engaged and loving and kind human, living human, come and bring your soul and your body together to the task at hand, to throw water upon, to bring water upon the mace, in order to draw upon the person the waters of chesed. Now the thing is, in the old days, which I don't think we do this anymore. It's a long time not to practice. In fact, there are those who say you're really not allowed to. They used to perfume the waters. There was like a whole order of spices and flowers and different things that were done in Talmudic times, and even much later, to perfume the waters. Nowadays we don't do it. One of the reasons why is because, like on a technical level, it's because in the old days, bodies were more subject to putrefaction because we didn't have like places that could be reliably cool enough to do this work until the burial. And so spices and scented waters and so on were a way of staving off putrefaction and decay and so on. But every physical practice has a spiritual parallel. So the idea is, like, what does it mean, the good smells? The good smells. So the good smelling waters, even if you're not using physical perfumery anymore like they used to, right? They would use herbs and so on. But even if you're not using that anymore, what's the idea of the good smell? So the good smell, we know the sages taught us, this is the good deeds, this is the good thoughts, this is good, like the goodness itself is called good smells. And the good acts that the person did throughout their lifetime is also the arousal of the good smells, is a way of also bringing to the process of Tahara a memory and a remnant or a recognition of the good deeds that they did in their lifetime. You know, we say we have the hadassim, the myrtle that's used in the 4 species, right? So the esrog, we have the things that have smell and taste and taste without smell and smell without taste, and neither taste nor smell. And we know that the aroma has to do with ma'asim tovim. It's good deeds. So even if you're not actually infusing your waters with sweet smelling things, you should have in your intention that you want to bring to bear, right? That you want to pray that the person's good deeds should be recalled on high, and that they were for sure they had many merits to their credit, because we know that even Jews who appear to not have much, who appear not to have much in their balance on the credits, chas v'shalom, all of that's just nonsense. That's just an external view, because if you co-host me, Alyssa, I can also mute if someone is heard. You can make me a co-host.
Okay, so the new people coming in.
That's okay. So I always feel bad, because I always feel like it's not because I don't mind I mind being interrupted. I always feel like, oh no, someone doesn't realize their mic is on, and then they might say something private, or somebody in the background might say something they'll be embarrassed about. Anyway, so you certainly have the ability to perfume the water, right? That's part of your perception. It has to do with your understanding of the fact that the Jewish people, it says, even those who appear to be empty among the Jewish people, they are they're full of mitzvot, like a pomegranate is full of seeds. So the person who lies before you, like, you may not be bringing any kind of perfumery, but what you're bringing is your awareness that this person for sure had many merits, for sure had done many mitzvot, for sure spent a life doing many good deeds, and whether they were observant or not observant. And so this is something that you can bring, because it's your place. The Chevra Kadisha brings the perfumed waters, right? That's what it says. Roses, it says. It was customary to use rose water a long time ago.
Right now we're putting bleach in the water, so it doesn't smell good at all.
It doesn't smell good at all. But the thing is, all of these ideas, it's important to bear in mind that where your thoughts are is where you are. Your intentions are paramount. Your intentions are foremost. So you can be in a clinical room, and yet your heart should be in Eretz Yisrael, and your mind and your heart should be focused on the perfumery of the person's good deeds in their lifetime, which for certain existed. And this is a way of really deepening the chesed that you're able to do while doing the work of Chevra Kadisha. Now, okay, so the let's see, the washing of the body moves from top to bottom. So should we go through it? Let's go through it. Sarech Keder Ezim. I'm assuming that the psukim that I have before me are standard, and this is what is said. But let me ask you. Yes, everybody. So if I make a mistake, you'll tell me. Sarech Keder Ezim Shegal Shu Mehar Gilad. Yes. Now this is from Shir Shirim, and it means that your hair is like a flock of goats that flow down from the mountain of Gilad. Now, first of all, what is this talking about? And why is it? Okay, so we start with the hair. Let's first talk about hair. Now, the significance of the hair, because this is really what I'm going to spend the rest of the time that we have talking about the different parts of the body. So the hair is called, they're called in the Kabbalistic works, Tzimtzumim Kedoshim. That means that there are tubules and channels that extend from the place of the mind, even though they're not from your brain, right? They're just external, but it's talking, they stem from the uppermost place, which is the top of your head, and they flow downward. And each one is a unique channel. And it says that there's millions and millions. The Zohar Kodesh speaks about the millions and millions and so many hairs. It's not really talking about the number of hairs on the head, rather about the fact that in apprehension of God, in consciousness of Hashem, every person's pathway is utterly unique to them. That's what a hair means. Every individual has no two hairs that goes from the same pore. They have a space between them. That's something that is like each one is its own unique channel. Now, this is talking, when Rashi tells us that this pasuk means that this is talking about the tribes, the 12 sons of Yaakov, when we came away from Lavan's house, and Lavan was trying to kill us, and the tribes all came flowing down from Har Gilad. That's the place. Gilad was Gal Eid, was the memorial stone, that commemoration stone, where Lavan and Yaakov made their final separation. So it says that why is this a praise of the Jewish people? Because each of the tribes, each of the sons of Yaakov, they were so different from each other, but they banded together as one to defend their father. That's what it says. Now, so when we talk about, so the hair flowing down, the downward flow of the hair is representative of the unique way in which this person, right, as you say the pasuk and you wash. So the hair is, this person had a unique channel of awareness of Hashem. The way that they felt close to Hashem was not, and the way that they perceived HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the way that they connected with Hashem was unique to them. They are utterly unique in the history of the universe. There will never be another seichel like theirs, never be another person exactly like them, never was, never is, never will be. They're completely indispensable in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan. That's called hairs. And hairs are the most externalized, like most dead part, right, of every person. And nevertheless, we still have praise of the hairs, because each one represents a totally unique channel of awareness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and none of them are to be slighted. Your teeth are like like a flock that's gathered together, that come up from the washing, and they're all perfectly even, and there's not a single one missing. In fact, this is the reason why in Yiddish, you know what you call teeth? Tzener, teeth, tzein, from tzon. It's like one of these interesting oddities of Yiddish, that we sometimes have words that are like alluding to deep secrets. So the idea that the teeth are like the white, the white. What does this mean? We have, your teeth are representative of the ways in which you process information, that you break things down, and that you have even teeth. That's called, if you have all your wisdom teeth, So you have 32 teeth. Your 32 teeth parallel your 32 spinal nerves, because both of them are channels, means through which that which comes into the mind or into the mouth, however we talk about it, gets distributed and processed and enters into you. So when we praise the Shinayich, we say to the person, you used your teeth to whatever extent you were able to in your lifetime to be able to break down, like you eat a piece of bread and you're able to chew it down, make it a part of yourself. You spent your lifetime, Hashem sent you information, Hashem sent you awareness of Him, He sent you Torah knowledge, whatever extent you received it, you broke it down and you used your teeth in order to assimilate whatever it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you. Those are your teeth. Your lips are like the crimson ribbon. What's the crimson ribbon? That's the ribbon that turns, the Chut HaShani turns white on Yom Kippurim. The red string that was put around the horns of the scapegoat, of the goat that was sent L'Azazel. Your mouth, through your prayers, you said prayers that overturned the things that you did wrong and turned them and made them. You asked God for forgiveness. You did good things with your mouth so that it became like the Chut HaShani, the scarlet thread that turns white. Midbarech Naveh. Your words are beautiful. And your rakatech means your cheeks are like two halves of a pomegranate, and your kerchief binds them. And here we call this the apples. These are called the apples of the face, and they represent. This is the place, like on a man's face, he could have hair any place except it could be very, very hairy, and all of the lower part of his face he could have a beard and a mustache. But here, this place is clear. The Arizal taught that's because a person's chen shines out, and their chesed and their goodness shines out from the place that like gets bunched up like a bunch of pomegranates, like two halves of a pomegranate, when they smile and they flush a little bit, right? They blush a little bit. So it's like these half. So this is a praise of the person that their facial muscles, that their face that they use to smile and be b'sever panim yofos, to look at other people and show them a good face. But every person has this, these apples of the cheeks. Your neck is like the Tower of David. That means to say you have here this communicator. It's banui letalpiot. It's built for talpiot. Your neck is the person's neck was what? The place of the communication between what they know and what they do. That's the place, that's the bridge. It's called the Migdal. And that bridge, that tower, it's like a bridge between what you know and what you do. So you had this beautiful neck. It was banui letalpiot. It was built letelpiot. It was built to support your Beit HaMikdash. That's a mountain with your mouth that has its mouth. So every single verse is filled with infinite meaning, and each one of them is a beautiful praise of. And I can go through the rest of the psukim. I want to know if I should, I shouldn't, but either way, we're almost to the end. There are others that you say further beyond Shadaich Kishnei Afarim v'chulei. Shnei Shadaich Kishnei Afarim. That the breasts are like Moshe and Aharon. It means to say you had a power of hashpa'ah. What does it mean, the breast? The breast is the place of the providing of the milk. It means you're a person who was able throughout your life to nourish and to provide for other people, and certainly you did. Kulach yafa, and then we say this general, the rest of it is like a whole general of kulach yafa rayati u'mamenbach. My beloved, you are entirely beautiful. There is not a single flaw in you. And we could try to imagine, just bear it in mind. You'll have the broken body in front of you. What a comfort and what a chesed it is for the soul of the person who's with you to be able to, that you say over them, kulach yafa rayati umum ein bach. You're entirely beautiful, my beloved. There's not a single flaw in you. What a delight and what a comfort and consolation it is for the soul of the person who's passed, that they see their own broken body, which shocks them. They're in such a state of shock, now being outside of this body and seeing it from beyond. Rosh Kesem Paz. Yeah. So I said the Rosh Kesem Paz, you start with the head. I said there's other possibilities. It's not, but either way, as you go through the psukim from Shir Hashirim that run from the top to the bottom, and as you know, you run from the top to the bottom, you run from the right, you go right to left, and the body is never supposed to be turned on its stomach. Someone asked, does the soul automatically understand Hebrew? That's a good question. I would assume yes. I always assume yes.
What was the question?
That the soul, does the soul understand Hebrew? I always assume that once a person leaves their body, they suddenly become full of knowledge that they forgot, because we know that we know that the soul, before it descends into the body, before it comes down into the world, really it's already in the body. So it already knows Kol HaTorah Kula, it knows all of the Torah. So what is it? What? And then you forget, right? You get like a little flick, and then you forget everything. You have to try and rediscover it. You spend your whole life trying to make up for lost time, and then I'm very hopeful that as soon as we're out of the constraint of the body, that we become very much more knowledgeable than we were. Like we go back to a state of more original knowledge. I would assume that people who are in Olam HaEmes know the Emes. People who are in the world of truth, they already get the truth. So we have, so the psukim that you say, this is something that is like an endless investment. Yes, go look up those psukim. Yes, go and read Rashi on them. Yes, know them better and understand them better. Yes, think about what it would mean. And by the way, he doesn't provide in Mavaya book, he doesn't provide so many understandings of the psukim. He just says it's the responsibility of the Chevra Kadisha to feel the depth of the psukim. Go ahead and delve into them, and you can come up also with your own understanding of what the significance will be, what you should be able to think when you're reciting these verses that you're saying when you're taking care of the mace, because this is something that this is a place where you can be mitamek, where you have the latitude to delve to the best of your ability into the meaning of the verses that you recite. Okay, now I think we can go forward to talk about the Tahara itself. There are certain practices. Just trying to think if there's, let me just give it a little thought. Well, maybe before we do that, I'll talk a little bit more about the parts of the body. So the head is the Kodesh HaKadoshim of the body. The head is the Holy of Holies of the body. And you can even think of the body in three separate sections with it has mechitzot. The body has partitions from section to section. There are flaps of muscle that separate, just like in the Mishkan and in the Beit HaMikdash, there were partitions that were made out of fabric that separated from section to section. So too in the human body, the body is the Mishkan. It's the sanctuary on a small scale. And so it also is built on the same model. So let's look at what it is. So we have here the head, and your head is inside of the head is where you have the capacity for holy thought. Now, in your capacity for holy thought, it's via your capacity for holy thought that you're able to be in a state of dveikut with Hashem, that you can come into a state of awareness of God. So the head of the mace is their Kodesh HaKadoshim. And so you start from the place of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And then as you move down, there's a flap of muscle that separates the torso from the head, and it's called the epiglottis. The epiglottis is like the parochet of the Mishkan or the Beit HaMikdash, that curtain, and it's a flap of muscle that covers over the trachea. So it's the partition between the next section of the body, where, what do you have? Well, your next section of your body is until your diaphragm. Diaphragm is sitting below your lungs, and your vital organs, your lungs and your heart, are inside in the area above the diaphragm. And below the diaphragm, you have your organs of digestion and of excretion and reproduction. And that also, those three parts, so you have Kodesh HaKadoshim, and then you have Kodesh, and then you have Chatzer, okay? We call this the inner sanctum, and then the sanctuary itself, where the menorah is, where the where the incense altar is. And then beyond that, you have the courtyard. And in the courtyard, what do you have? You have the big altar, right? The big altar where the animals went up, and that's equivalent to the digestive system and also the rest of the accompanying organs. Someone asked a question, why can't we? Yeah, Tammy says it's a good chazara for Talmud Dvorah. Yes, it is. Because Talmud Dvorah is a great sefer to learn as an accompaniment to the work of Chevra Kadisha, because the Ramak, Rav Moshe Cordovero, also provides a lot of insight into the different parts of the body and their holiness, and the general form of the Tzelem Elokim, its different places and stages and its functions. So yeah, I highly recommend, thank you for the reminder, Tammy, highly recommend a close study of Talmud Dvorah to enhance your practice. So
Yehudis, excuse me, could you just go over again the parts of the body, the head, the glottis, the thorax, the digestion?
Well, so we have the head and its partition. So what's called Kodesh Kadashim, let's call it the Holy of Holies, right? And it's equivalent to the Holy of Holies, because what's in the Holy of Holies? There's only one thing there. There is the Aron, right? On top of it is the Kruvim. On top of the Aron is the Kruvim. Inside of the Aron is the Torah. So that's up here. Your capacity for bonding with Hashem, that's your dveikus, the place of bonding in your consciousness with God, and your repository of Torah knowledge, that's your place of your Aron. So that's up here. And then you have the cutoff place, which is, or the flap of muscle, the boundary, which is the epiglottis. And then below that, you enter into the thorax. In the thorax, what do we have? We have mainly, we're talking about the heart and the lungs. Now, interestingly enough, inside of the Kodesh in the Mishkan, so there was another thing there. There was the table, right? Now the table, the deeper works explain that the table is not food. Even though the showbread table appears to be food, it's not about that. It's about the consumption of energy that goes immediately into spiritual work. It goes so that's not called eating. That's called like high level holy combustion. And that belongs in the thorax, and it has more to do with heart and lungs than it does with your stomach, okay? But for those I don't want to lose people who are not so familiar, but after that, you have the diaphragm, and once you pass the diaphragm, so what do you have past your diaphragm? You have your organs of digestion and all their accompaniments, like your liver and your gallbladder, and you have all of your organs of elimination, and you have your organs of excretion of your kidneys and so on, your mayim and everything else. And your reproductive organs. So that's all and that's called the chatzer. That's called the outer courtyard, where the big altar is, where the animality, right? Where the physicality has to be made into holiness. So when you have a Jew before you, right? The mace is before you. You're looking at a kodesh. You're looking at the sanctuary. You're looking at a mishkan that right now at this moment in time no longer has it's animating soul inside of it. But you're mechabered the way you would be any, like I said before, the tashmishe kedusha, the structures that held holiness, the Torah, the cover of the Torah scroll, the mezuzah case, the batim of the tefillin, the housing of the tefillin, and so on. So this is all tashmishe kedusha. And so as you're moving through the body, right, as you're moving down the body, so every part is a whole world unto itself. And the eyes and the ears and the nose and the mouth are all representative of all 10 spheres you have in your face. You have, the body is tashmishe kedusha without a doubt. The body is itself is quite the contrary. We are more careful with the kavod of the body than we are with any other tashmishe kedusha. There's no other housing of a holy object, right? That receives more honor from us than the body once the soul is no longer in it. It's the ultimate of tashmishe kedusha. That's why to compare it to the housing, the covering of the Sefer Torah, or the housing of the tefillin, it really doesn't do justice, because quite the contrary, those objects are akin in some small way to the body, not the other way around. Not to confuse it, because it's the body is the ultimate tashmish of kedusha. because the soul is of the highest kedusha. The soul is of the highest holiness. It's a chelik elokam imal. It's a bit of God from on high. And the fact that it inhabited this body, how much respect we have to show. So I mentioned before, what's the respect? The ultimate respect is covering. That's called, because that's like a garment, machabduse, like Rabbi Yochanan said, I never call my garments. I call them the ones that give me honor, because they cover, the respectful covering. Does the body without its soul have any power to stave off evil free radicals? Alyssa asks. No, it's very limited in its capacity. If a person was a very great tzaddik, perhaps, but even then, Shlomo Melech said, better a living dog than a dead lion. That's what he said. And he meant better a living person who's just average than even a dead tzaddik, because once a person has left this world and the body is no longer inhabited by the soul, then there's nothing to be done. So it's now we know look, I went on a camping trip with my students here last week. We went away for 2 days. We slept out in the beach by the Kinneret, and on Thursday we had the opportunity to go to Rabbi Yehuda Nassi's grave. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Nassi, the Talmud tells us that for 13 years after he passed away, he continued to appear to his wife and make kiddush for her on Friday nights. Means not in the body, in the spirit. And it's on the basis of this that one of the great Achronim asks and answers the question as to whether it's possible for a disembodied soul, to an apparition, to be motzi you kiddush, a living person kiddush. And it's treated very seriously. It's an actual question on Shulchan Aruch. And the answer is, if someone is like Rebbe, who has the capacity to be so alive, even after he's dead, that he's able to show up and make kiddush for his wife as he did in life, so he can also be motzi, the living. It's an interesting answer. You'd think that once a person, why are niftarim called niftarim? They're pturim in mitzvot, because they no longer are obligated in mitzvot. Nevertheless, there is such a thing as tzaddikim kruim chaim afilu misasam, that there are people who are so righteous that the righteous are called living even after they pass away. So, perhaps it helps. But nevertheless, even Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, even though his body didn't decompose for quite a long time, and he was still somehow communicating after his death, at some point his wife saw the worm in his ear. And that means that, at some point, even for the greatest of tzaddikim, they also are subject to the forces of tumah, and it's something that is we are all. It's a universal affliction, unless you're Eliyahu Hanavi, who somehow manages to get out of the whole equation by taking his body with him up on high. So let's go back. So we have, like here, the head, the repository of Torah and Dvekut, connection with Hashem. And the metzach, when you see a person's, when you're cleaning the forehead. Your forehead is called the place of your will. That's what it says in the deeper works. What you wanted, what you want. It's exhibited in the forehead. And so the forehead is you're touching the person's will, and you're touching the eyes. The eyes are representative of hashkacha. And again, it's not so much anymore about the person that's in front of you, because the model of the body is built on the form of the Tzelem Elokim. And so every soul that came to inhabit a body, eyes mean hashkacha. Eyes remind you of divine providence. And ears remind you of tshuva and the ability to hear and really listen and process, and that there's a deep bina, and all of these different body parts that you think we're all built along the same lines. Our universal body is because we have a universal source in the one most high. And so the respect that you give is not even so much about the individual's actions in this world, because you don't necessarily know. You can't contemplate someone's goodness. You don't know them. What should you know? No, but you know that the one thing you know is that they were a soul that inhabited a body that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created along the lines of his very own shape and form, Kaviyachol. And that the body is not because God has any kind of a form, but because these are spiritual qualities that are embedded within human beings. And so the person that you have before you is a human, and just on the basis of that alone, they are divine. They're human and they're divine because they're created in the divine image. And so every part of their body, what holiness is before you? What arms when you draw water over their arms, what chesed and gvura were they invested with? What tiferes were they invested with in their torso, their heart that could understand Torah and connect with other people, and that joined them all together? What power of hashpa'ah was within them in their genitals to be able to connect and bind and share. And this is all the holiness of the body, and nothing. It's kulach. What are you going to say? Kulach yafa rayati umum ein bach. You are entirely beautiful, my beloved. There is no flaw in you. Your body was representative. It was not a representation, an analog of the loftiest attributes. And so the Chevra Kadisha, you come and you are reinfusing the holiness of the body back to the body by the way that you perceive and the way that you treat the body that's before you. It's an incredible task and an incredible privilege that's in your hands. This is why it's called the Chevra Kadisha. The Chevra Kadisha was like the Golshevsky people got to serve in Chevra Kadisha traditionally. Chevra Kadisha work was for the best and the best of every community. To contribute. This was something that was never given over, wasn't traditionally given over to people who were stam people in the community. Quite the contrary, it was a task that was entrusted always to the people who were the best of the community, because it's an incredible responsibility. Not only that it should be done properly, halachically, but also with a proper yiras kavod, with really a deep appreciation of the holiness of the person who's before you. Now, let's see. And the here, we really have to already end. Oh my goodness! And I have to teach soon. I have another class. But I want to tell you, I sort of want to close off. It says V'ismach. This is the language of the Mavaya book. V'ismach v'yagel ma'od ba'adam hazeh achai be'emet machayev v'noten neshama b'ruchniuto le'ivarav hametin mikoach hargashat tivit. So you want to, like, the Chevra Kadisha should rejoice, really exult and rejoice, being the living person who was able to invest themselves into this task of reinfusing life and holiness into the uninhabited body of the Mesa who is before you. Like, he said, you know, what a privilege it is. It's something to rejoice over, that you have the ability to do this, because it is one of the very last things that anyone is going to be able to do in physical terms on behalf of the nifter.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're done today.
Thank you, Yehudis. So I'll just do a little bit of wrap up here if you feel like you need to leave, but thank you so much. I think everybody's just a little bit like we have to process all this information.
It's a lot. That's why I didn't want to, it's enough to spend an hour just talking about the holiness of the body, because this is the main, I think this is the main area of Kavana is indicated by the Mavaya book, even though there's significance to all of the details of the washing, which if we have a further opportunity, we can talk about another time. But this is really the main, this is the main area of Avodah.
Awesome. So thank you. I'm going to invite everybody. There are some of us who are learning, hopefully all knew about it, inside the Ma'avaya book with Rebbetzin Golshevsky. They're ones that we're asking people to contribute a little bit of money to, because we are paying Yehudis to teach us. So we had one session with her. We're having another one on June 10th. And please be in touch with me if you'd like to join that. It's a small group. I think there's about 15 women that participated in the last class with her. And we're going to have some discussion around it just to kind of keep like processing the information. Cause community of Chevra Kadisha women is really looking to continue to collect us and gather us. And support each other. And to that end, we do have an event planned for June 20th. I know it's Father's Day in the United States, but we're going to go ahead anyway and do it at noon on June 20th. And 4 lovely ladies from our community of practice have volunteered to present a little panel conversation about how they have processed difficult, emotionally difficult, physically difficult Taharas that they've done, like their tools or their experiences, how they interacted with difficult, painful, emotional Taharas that they've done. So that should be interesting. And again, the aim is to connect us. The aim is to create a community out of us. And anybody you know that is part of a Chevra Kadisha, Orthodox Chevra Kadisha, traditional Chevra Kadisha is invited to join us. And if you have other ideas of how we can continue to create this community, please, please, please be in touch. And if anybody has anything, they can unmute themselves to say something or say hello or say goodbye or whatever you want to do. This is a community that's for you.
Hi, I just want to thank you for this wonderful, inspiring lecture. And it really affecting me, not only for Chevra Kadisha work, for my personal life. It's really not just about Chevra Kadisha, it's about ourselves inside, how we take care of us. So thank you so much. I will see you on June 20th.